The subject matter discussed in this video is highly disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
This is John Wayne. No, not that John Wayne. The other John Wayne Gacy. There we go. That's him. John is a pillar of his community. He is a hard worker and runs a successful remodeling business, PDM Contractors.
I started doing painting, and then I started doing wallpapering and decorating. And inside of 3 years, PDM, which is painting, decorating, and maintenance, was doing $1 million a year.
Neighbors and associates consider him an ambitious and reliable businessman who provides jobs to young men.
So, how do you like working with John Wayne Gacy?
Yeah, it's cool. I like it. Says that your real name, John Wayne?
Sure is. Tell me, Stu, do you wrestle?
This is a hard-driving, very hard-working individual. I was astounded.
His industrious and creative nature puts him up there with the likes of Da Vinci and Michelangelo.
You know, people always ask me who my favorite artists are and why. And I did not know that Michelangelo was homosexual. It doesn't make no difference to me. He was a workaholic. He was a sculptor. He was a painter and did a lot of other things. Da Vinci was an inventor in that. And of course, in my life, I've done painting, decorating, wallpapering. I've done mural work, you name it.
John volunteers in local Democratic Party activities, which gives him a reputation as a civic-minded individual. He is active in his community, participating in the JCs, an organization that helps young men to develop leadership skills and foster personal growth.
Besides working full-time, I also, I was a chaplain for the JCs and also ran the membership campaign. But we also did parades. And in the summertime, like on 4th of July, I used to be in 4 parades in one day.
He organizes and attends charitable events, including fundraisers, which earns him respect from peers. He is also very good with kids and performs at children's parties as a clown named Pogo, entertaining the kids at hospitals and community gatherings in order to bring joy to the children of his town.
We would visit different hospitals and entertain the children there. And we didn't entertain them with handcuffs or anything like that. All we used was balloon animals and small toys and stuff like that.
He is father to 2 adorable children from his first wife, Michael Myers. From his first wife, Marilyn Myers. He is also a stepfather to 2 little girls, Tammy and April, from his second wife, Carol Hoff. As you can see, John Wayne Gacy is the perfect citizen and should serve as a role model to all aspiring young men.
I moved to Waterloo, Iowa. I was honored as Man of the Year.
John only has one tiny flaw. He likes to rape, torture, and murder teenage boys and throw their bodies in the crawl space under his house.
I strolled down the streets and stalked young boys and slaughtered them.
His first sexual assault was on a guy named Voorhees. No, not that Voorhees. Another Voorhees. Donald Voorhees. Gacy lured him to his home under the pretense of showing him some porn, which was bad enough, considering Donald was only 15 years old at the time. He then plies Donald with alcohol and coerces him into giving him a blowjob. Gacy continues this tactic of using alcohol and porn to assault boys. But as time goes by, his behavior slowly gets more violent and sadistic.
There are a few chilling incidents where he actually threatened some of these young men. Though he didn't injure or kill anyone as far as we know.
In 1967, Gacy lured 16-year-old John Tullery to his home. They watched pornographic movies drank, and played pool. Then, without warning, Gacy forced Tullery onto a bed at knife point, handcuffed him, and started to choke him.
In the case of John Tullery, he followed the usual getting them drunk and showing pornography and then turning suddenly and using violence or threat, and in this case a knife, to force that person into handcuffs, into a power submissive role, and then to actually inflict torturous sexual behaviour, taunting, choking, threats to that individual, who would, generally speaking, in many occasions, not report this.
Luckily for Tullery, Gacy wasn't a murderer just yet, and he was released unharmed. A year has now passed since the Voorhees incident, and Voorhees finally tells his father Gacy sexually assaulted him, and Gacy is arrested. He gets charged with oral sodomy, so he hatches a plan and pays an 18-year-old employee of his named Russell Schroeder $300 to intimidate Voorhees into not testifying at the trial. Schroeder lures Voorhees into a park, sprays mace into his eyes and beats him up, but Voorhees escapes and reports the attack. The police pick up Schroeder, who snitches on Gacy, and Gacy gets an extra charge of assault and witness intimidation added onto the initial charge of sodomy.
The basis of it was a sodomy conviction. It's the only thing I ever was sentenced to was a sodomy conviction. They're claiming that the state representative's son, who was on the other party, he claims that he was sexually abused by me. And in essence, he was blackmailing me for it. Now, what it boiled down to was oral copulation. And it was consensual. At the time, this young individual made the charge at me. He was blackmailing me. He wanted more and more money. He said, look, I gave you a blowjob. Now you got to pay for this. I said, go see your father.
He gets sentenced to 10 years in prison. While he's there, he's very careful not to tell anyone that he's in prison for molesting boys. Otherwise, he would have got shanked to death.
Someone can... I've been stabbed!
Instead, he tells them he got jailed for showing teenage boys pornos. While he's in prison, his wife Marilyn divorces him and leaves with the kids. Gacy never sees them again. His 10-year sentence is shortened to a measly 18 months before he's released on parole for good behavior. He moves to Chicago to start a new life and moves into 8213 West Somerdale Avenue, which is soon to become the most famous house in America. While still on parole, he gets accused of sexually assaulting another teenage boy, but the charges get dropped after the boy doesn't turn up at court. In 1972, Gacy graduates to his first kill, which comes in the form of a 16-year-old boy named Timothy McCoy, a transient from Iowa. Gacy spots a tired Timothy at Chicago's Greyhound bus station on a cold night in January 1972 and offers him a warm bed and food, promising to drop him off back to the bus station in the morning. Timothy, cold and tired, accepts the kind offer. Back at his house, Gacy softens the poor boy up with booze and rapes him in his inebriated state. At some point, he stabs Timothy repeatedly in the chest, piercing his lungs and heart, killing him. After Timothy's soul has left his body, Gacy buries him in the crawl space underneath his house. Later, he pours concrete over it to mask the stench of the decaying corpse.
Tim McCoy was the first one, and Tim McCoy's name wasn't put on him until 1988. Prior to that, he was known as Unknown Number 9, and he was buried by me in the crawl space.
Gacy later says that everything was consensual and goes on to claim self-defense by asserting Timothy attacked him with the knife first.
What was the circumstances of that?
He was killed in the house in self-defense.
And who killed him then?
I stabbed him.
Yeah, and it was an issue of self-defense. Why was he in the process of assaulting you, or what?
He was coming at me with a knife. I just took the knife away and twisted it in his hand, and that's what killed him.
But the sick bastard contradicts himself by saying the act gave him a mind-numbing orgasm. This killing begins a series of at least 33 brutal murders over the next 6 years, as Gacy's lust for sadistic sexual violence escalates. A few months after this first murder, Gacy gets married to a divorcee with 2 daughters named Carol Hoff. Being a closet homosexual, this marriage was clearly a sham, designed to conceal his actual intentions. At this point, he is also building his reputation up as a hard-working and benevolent individual, and people around the community grow to like him. He throws massive parties for 100 to 200 people at a time and dresses up as a clown and performs magic tricks. He gets involved with the youth organization.
And of course, we used pornography. We had stag shows, and that's how we increased the membership from 150 to 400 members in that JC chapter. We were dealing with porno films, and we had a girl set up in a room in that. So it was, the thing to do. We were boosting membership from it. So nobody said a word about it.
He successfully uses his intelligence and charm to dupe everyone into thinking he's an upstanding citizen. As well as the JCs, Gacy uses his painting and decorating business to be around more boys to potentially manipulate and murder. And he would also hunt for victims on the streets. His process was sadistic and methodical. He would target vulnerable young males, often runaways, hitchhikers, or job seekers, whom he lures with promises of jobs, alcohol, drugs, or a place to crash.
If you pull up at a stoplight and there's somebody standing there waiting for a bus, if you give them a ride, if you ask them whether, do you get in anything or you want drugs or something like that?
Coupled with his charisma and talent at deceiving people, this ensures Gacy a steady supply of young fresh fish to lure in and devour. Once he gets them back to his place, Gacy gets them drunk or high, then tricks the teenagers into handcuffs with a magic trick. He puts handcuffs on himself and then escapes from them using a hidden key. He convinces the boys to try it, and they soon realize this isn't a trick. Once the boy is shackled, he is Gacy's to do as he pleases. Other times he would use chloroform-soaked rags to knock them out. Once restrained, they were helpless. He would then subject his victim to prolonged rape, beatings, burns, and psychological torment, often keeping them alive for hours to maximize suffering, deriving pleasure and sexual satisfaction from his victim's pain.
The young men would frequently be drugged, handcuffed, subjected to repeated rapes and terrifying ordeals of torture. Then they would be strangled.
He always picked the kind of attractive guy that he could never be himself. But these individuals became less individualistic as far as he's concerned. They became more and more objects. I mean, the more they became simply objects for him to do with as he wished, the more horrific and torturous their experience was within his company.
They are finished off with another magic trick. This trick Gacy called his rope trick, which was a rope looped around the neck, tightened by twisting a stick.
The rope trick is not, the way I've described the rope trick is it's nothing more than a tourniquet. And I had explained it to them, I even demonstrated it to them. It would cut off the air. So if you're going to kill somebody, you just put it on their neck and twist it 3 times or 4 times or whatever, till the person stopped moving.
He would masturbate during this act and occasionally pause to revive them with smelling salts, prolonging the ordeal to heighten his gratification. He would time it so that he could orgasm just as the life left his victim's eyes. Once their souls had ascended to heaven, he would keep their corpses for hours or days in his bed or bathtub, masturbating beside or on the bodies as part of his ritual to complete the act of domination. Before burying them, he would mutilate or dismember the bodies so they could fit in his crawl space, and this act would also get him aroused. Gacy was under the impression that covering bodies in quicklime speeds up the decomposition process and reduces the smell, and he was half right. The dehydration takes away some of the smell, but slows down the rate of decomposition.
That's why the lime was spread in the crawl space.
How much lime was spread down there eventually?
I think 700 or 800 pounds of it.
During this period, his marriage to Carol becomes strained, as well as becoming more abusive towards her. His late-night absences and the presence of young men in their home begins to become too much to accept. At this point, she still has no idea that she's married to a closeted homosexual and murderous rapist of epic proportions. Somehow, the silly woman hasn't realized there's a load of dead teenagers underneath her house, with her daughters running around just above them, completely oblivious. Another one of his victims was an 18-year-old former employee of Gacy's construction business named John Butkovich. John shows up at Gacy's house demanding back pay, pissed off after Gacy stiffs him. Gacy invites John in, offering whiskey and a promise to settle up. After small talk, Gacy suggests his handcuff trick, saying it's a prank. Once restrained, Gacy drops the act. He beats John's face with his fists, splitting his lip and breaking his nose. Gacy strips him naked, taunting him about his tough guy attitude. He rapes John repeatedly, sodomizing him for hours, causing severe anal tearing and internal bleeding. Gacy then does the rope trick, and John shits himself as he dies. Gacy keeps the body in his bedroom overnight, masturbating beside it, then buries him in a grave in his garage. In his confession, Gacy admits he lost track of time during his prolonged session torturing John. By this time, he is having so much fun raping and murdering boys, he has lost interest in sex with Carol, and she is finding his gay pornos around the house. Eventually, 4 years after their marriage, she becomes suspicious of his activities and notices strange odors in the house, so she finally divorces him in March of 1976. She takes her daughters and moves out, leaving the house now fully under his control to use as a playground for his sickening hobbies.
Gacy began actively cruising Chicago's city streets, looking to pick up young men from gay districts, known pickup spots, and areas where waifs and strays would congregate.
The sneaky bastard would sometimes pose as a police officer to pick boys up.
Gacy was able to actually use one of his roles, that of a pseudo-police officer. He had the wherewithal in terms of, a radio, and he would often hide behind a badge and have, bits of what looked like police paraphernalia.
This is, of course, another way to get them into handcuffs easily so he could have his way with them. Other times he would offer them drugs.
On a night in March 1978, 27-year-old Jeffrey Rignall was lured into Gacy's car by his offer to share a joint. He was chloroformed, driven to Gacy's house, and subjected to prolonged agonizing sexual torture. After being repeatedly drugged, he eventually awoke, sprawled under a statue in Chicago's Lincoln Park. Despite reporting the incident, Gacy remained at large.
He would dehumanize his victims and think of them as worthless objects, as trash to be used and disposed of, and this gave him the excuse to be as sadistic as he liked with them. He reveled in inflicting terror and pain on these boys before he exercised the ultimate control over them by taking their lives. During some assaults, Gacy dressed as Pogo the Clown, painting his face to terrify his victims. He forced some to perform oral sex on him while choking them, timing it to prolong their agony. At one point, he murders 2 boys at the same time, 15-year-old Randall Reffitt and 14-year-old Samuel Stapleton, one of Gacy's youngest victims. They were both gagged with a cloth and killed by strangulation or asphyxiation. His use of cloth stuffed down his victims' throats was common, likely to stifle their screams as he raped them. Gacy admitted to binding both victims, and one struggled desperately to escape after seeing the other die, but his fate was also sealed and he was murdered too. For 6 solid years, Gacy murders again and again.
They're just names and faces. And when you look at them...
Up until then, he was only targeting individuals that nobody would miss, or the police felt weren't a priority, but then he got reckless and murdered someone that wouldn't be forgotten so easily.
When Gacy stopped targeting young gay homeless men who weren't really part of the community, but instead targeted Robert Piest, who was an all-American high school kid with a good family who were going to report him as missing, who were going to say, how's the police investigation going? It was only by choosing that type of victim that really was the unraveling of Gacy.
Gacy had visited Nissen Pharmacy to bid on a remodeling job, and that's where he met 15-year-old Robert Piest. He offered Robert $5 an hour for construction work. Gacy drove him home, promising a detailed job offer. Inside, Gacy gave Robert beer and marijuana, loosening him up. He showed off a chloroform-soaked rag, claiming it was a party trick. When Robert passed out, Gacy cuffed his wrists and ankles, tying him to a bed frame. Robert woke to Gacy raping him, screaming as Gacy burned his chest with lit cigarettes. Gacy stuffed a sock in Robert's mouth to muffle him, tearing his lips. He beat Robert's genitals with a belt, causing swelling and bruising. Finally, Gacy wrapped a rope around Robert's neck, twisting the tourniquet while raping him one last time. Robert's body convulsed, his hyoid bone snapping under the pressure.
The owners of the drugstore told us that they had a contractor who was to do repair work inside of their pharmacy. They supplied us with some information pertaining to his telephone number, and through the phone number we were able to determine his full name and address. And that's the first time we ever knew the name John Wayne Gacy.
Des Plaines police began investigating and quickly identified Gacy as the last person seen with Robert. A background check revealed Gacy's 1968 conviction in Iowa for sodomizing Donald Voorhees. This history of sexual assault raised red flags, and police managed to obtain a search warrant for Gacy's house.
And they wanted to come in and talk to me about Robert Peast. And I had told him that I had not had any conversation with him, but I said, if you want to talk to me, then come back there.
They didn't find Robert, whose body was hidden in the attic, but they did find several alarming items. A high school class ring that didn't belong to Gacy, shackles, chains, pornos, and driver's licenses of other young men. They also noticed a foul odor emanating from the crawl space beneath the house, which Gacy dismissed as a sewage issue, a lie he had used for years to explain the stench of decomposing bodies. After they left, Gacy still hadn't disposed of Robert's dead body, and he needed to get rid of it quickly, but didn't have any more space under his house. So he wrapped the body up, masturbating over it one last time, drove to a bridge, and dumped it in the river. Gacy admitted that he rushed the disposal due to Robert's quick missing person report. After a second visit to Gacy's house by the police, they noticed the smell of dead bodies again and got another search warrant. This was when they investigated the crawl space and found the bodies.
We took a screwdriver into a little crack in the floor, and when we did, the whole floor lifted up.
Beneath the unassuming suburban home, detectives had made a discovery that would see it become one of the most infamous houses in American history.
There was a lot of water in the crawl space. As a matter of fact, the body had to be taken up literally out of water. The evidence technician had to reach down and feel a rib cage and then pull the rib cage up out of the water. The evidence technician that was doing the excavation was feeling down under the water, and he yelled out to us, and everybody kind of turned around to see what he was worried. He said, I've got another rib cage down here.
Gacy was immediately arrested, and under interrogation, Gacy cracked and confessed to the murders.
To my understanding, there was a total of 29 bodies, or 28 bodies were found on the property. 27 of them under the house.
And the rest?
One was under the driveway, one was under the garage. So that makes a total of 29.
In various stages of decay, some reduced to bones, others mummified. Some had been hacked at and folded up to fit in the small space. He had dumped 4 bodies in the river, including Robert's, which washed up a while later, and was identified via dental records. Robert's autopsy showed ligature marks, cigarette burns, genital trauma, and anal tearing. 8 bodies remained unidentified until further advancements in DNA technology, after which 3 more were named. 5 remain unidentified to this day. Inside Gacy's torture room, they found a stained mattress, ropes, handcuffs, a wooden board with restraints, and a toolbox with pliers, knives, and a cattle prod he used to shock victims' genitals. He had kept Polaroids of some victims, bound and gagged, and he kept some of their personal items as trophies. Gacy gave police a 70-page statement describing each kill with clinical detail. He showed no remorse, calling victims trash and boasting about his efficiency. Later on, Gacy recanted the confession, and even with all the evidence, he tried to deny it was him. He also tries to assert that someone else was burying bodies under his house without his knowledge.
Did you bury any of the others in the crawl space?
No, I had nothing. I had no knowledge of them.
Yeah. Well, why is it that your first one is there, and then 20 some others are buried down there as well? Did somebody know that you had done this with the first one, to giving them an idea?
More than likely, when drinking and getting high with the others, yeah.
Admitting it to them. So you feel others then followed your suit in using this as a burial ground?
Without a doubt.
Right.
At his trial, he received 12 death sentences and 21 life sentences. Gacy spent 14 years on death row, maintaining a defiant and unrepentant stance. He painted clowns and gave interviews, insisting on his innocence or minimizing his crimes. On May 10, 1994, he was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center in Illinois. His final words were "kiss my ass," reflected his lack of remorse. His execution lasted 18 minutes after one of the IV lines clogged. After his execution, his brain was removed by Dr. Helen Morrison, who still has possession of it, and his body was then cremated and his ashes claimed by his sister from Arkansas.
Hey, I got news for you. I killed 33 times. You're only gonna kill me once. Gacy outsmarted him again.
Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number.
I'm John Wayne Gacy.
It's hard to look right at your baby, but here's my number.
I'm John Wayne Gacy.